Hi everyone. Today I thought it might be fun to do a book review, and specifically I wanted to go over with you the books that I find myself turning to most often with my students. So I've got a nice fat stack of books here next to me, and I thought we'll just go through them. I'd like to tell you why I think they're worth having, maybe play you a few excerpts from each so you can decide whether you like the flavour of those books or not. So let's kick off with the earliest books. So if you're just an absolute beginner, the Piano Adventures books are the ones I most recommend. So here we've got book 1 and book 2. This is the Accelerated Piano Adventures for older beginners. There are different editions of Faber books, Piano Adventures series, but I find these ones are the nicest ones to work with. So I've got book 1 and book 2 here, and what I like about this series is that they combine traditional methods of teaching, which is, name the notes and learn your rhythms and play some pieces. And, that's the foundation pretty much every course. But in this one, they also introduce you to interval reading and chord progressions. So they're combining the classical approach with the more modern chord-based approach. So you don't often get that in one book. So you get a book that goes with one direction, or you get books that use the other direction, but this one actually combines them both. And it's very pedagogically up to date. It's very well explained, and it really walks you through everything you need to know to get a good start in piano playing. So book 1 really gets you started. It introduces you to the notes on the staff, gives you plenty of practice of playing them, recognizing intervals. So from the start to the end of the book, you'll have built up from recognizing everything up to a fifth. And you'll have learned the basic chords 1 and 5, 7, which will make more sense as you go through the book. It'll get you reading flats and sharps and rhythms up to eighth notes or quavers. At the start of the book, everything is in the simplest key, C, but by the end of the book, you'll also be reading stuff in the key of G. And then you can follow that with your second book, and this introduces a wider range of keys, major and minor, pentascales, tempo markings. You add another interval of a 6, which really is pretty much everything you need. Dotted rhythms, a few scales, C, G, and F, and pieces in those 3 keys. So you'll be really well-rounded by the time you work through both of these books. And the music in them is really nice to play. There's some well-known pieces and arrangements, obviously, of well-known pieces, but there's some original stuff as well. It's really quite quirky, so nice to play. I really enjoyed these books. So the next stop is the Classics to Moderns books. And these are edited by Dennis Agay and very, very well put together. There's actually 6 books in the collection that bring you from beginners or elementary, I should say, early elementary. If you're, coming out of a beginner's course like Piano Adventures, you could go straight into these and start working your way through quite, seamlessly. But it goes from there up to book 6, which would be advanced, maybe up to grade 8 stuff. And what I like about these is a few things I like about them. First of all, these are not arrangements of pieces. They are the original pieces. So it's just very, very carefully curated to find pieces at each level and, no adapting them or arranging them. So you know that when you're learning a piece of music, you are learning the original. I think that's really, really important. I know that it can be real disappointment to spend time working on a piece of music only to discover down the line that what you've actually learned is not the original, it's somebody else's arrangement, and often a simplified version. So it's nice to play pieces that are in their original state. So the composers in these collections are a combination of well-known, you've got your Mozart, your Beethoven, your Chopin, all those different composers, but also some lesser-known composers and absolute gems that often get overlooked. We're always going to the well-known names. And I like the way the books are laid out. So in the title, in the contents page, they give you the list of composers from the earliest up to the most modern, in this case Shostakovich. So it's not all that modern, but up to the earlier 20th century anyway. But when you actually go through the book, you can see the page numbers are not consecutive. So actually it's arranged in terms of how easy it is. So easy to hard, going front to back. There's a look at the very first piece in this book, and at the end of the book you can see we've come on quite a bit if you work your way through. But if you were to go through them, piece by piece, or even dip in, but going in that order, you'd find, you're able to work through them. Really, really nice supplementary material for sight reading. So even if you're at an intermediate stage or more advanced and you're just looking for stuff to work on for sight reading, that's just pieces that are nice to have anyhow, then these are great books to dip into. You'll find some absolute gems in there. I love this book. I absolutely love this book. This is by Pauline Hall, and what she has done is she's listened to what people really like to play, whether it's children or adults or whoever it is. Often the pieces we want to play are the pieces that we're familiar with, the classical tunes, for example, that we know, because we've heard them in ads, we've heard them in movies, and they're played on the radio all the time. And she's taken all those beautiful classical pieces and she's made very simple arrangements. So these are arrangements, these aren't original pieces, but she's made them very accessible. As you can see, I'll show you the very first piece. So you can see a beginner, somebody coming out of a method book, could go straight into that without too much difficulty. But working through it, it brings you up to something around early intermediate, late elementary, early intermediate. So graded all the way through, and just an absolutely fabulous collection of tunes. You know pretty much every tune in this. I had a really hard time picking out which tunes I wanted to share with you today because I love them all. But for example, it has Jesu, Joy of Man's Desiring. I'm just reading from the back here. They give you an overview of it. Blue Danube, The Wedding March, Ode to Joy, Four Seasons, Toreador Song from Carmen. You know, lots of stuff that even if you don't know the names of them, when you start to play them, you realize, oh God, I actually know that piece. So really fun book to have. I highly recommend. So it's Piano Time Classics by Pauline Hall. Really worth having. So then I also have, I dip into quite a lot. There's actually 4 books in this collection, the Encore series from ABRSM. Now, it's not so much that I'm saying that you absolutely have to get this collection, but I suppose the point I want to make is that the Associated Boards of the Royal Schools of Music in the UK, but it's internationally based, bring out collections of music, and they're always really, really well curated. I particularly like this one because it's based on favourites from piano exams. In particular years, always, you'll find that there are certain pieces of music that students choose again and again and again. They're just drawn to, really attractive. So what they've done is they've picked out the most popular exam tunes over the years and they've put them together in one book. So you'll get a mixture of, you know, well-known classic pieces, but also quirky little modern pieces in different styles, you know, swing pieces, jazz pieces, blues, all kinds of things, but really, really fun stuff. If you're looking for collections of music, it's really worth going to the ABRSM website or even onto Amazon and just putting in ABRSM and seeing what collections come up, because they really do put together some very nice anthologies. So here I have a couple of books from the Dozen a Day series. Now you may be familiar with the Dozen a Day because it's they must be 60 or 70 years old now. They've been around for forever, it seems. The books of technical exercises. So you start off with your simple 5-finger scales and it introduces you to different levels of exercise. So what they've done recently is they've put together collections of songs that kind of go with those different levels of technical exercise. So if you're going through the early dozen a day technical exercise books, then you can then transfer the skills you're learning into this one, for example. And as you go through them, you can build up. There's actually a couple of even simpler books than this one. This is book 1, but there are preparatory levels before this as well. So what I like about this is, again, it's accessible. These are arrangements again, but it's very accessible arrangements of very well-known songs. So for example, in A Dozen a Day, you're going to have music from Cabaret, from The Sound of Music. We've got Climb Every Mountain in there. We've got a Beatles song, Let It Be. I'll show you that one now in a minute. Now, you might not like everything that's in this. For example, I don't know if you'll be very interested in learning the wonderful thing about Tiggers, although I'm very fond of it. But I think of these as like a bit like when you buy a cookbook. You know you're not going to use every recipe in the cookbook, but if you find 3 or 4 things that you like in it, then it's worth the buy, isn't it? So it's the same with these books. The book 2, if you're a little bit more advanced, if you're around early intermediate, you'll find lots of stuff in book 2, actually. It's got Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah, I Dreamed a Dream. It's got In the Mood, Moon River. I'll show you that one as well. You Raise Me Up. So it's a really nice collection and nicely arranged, so worth having. So this is a book by William Gillock, and it's not that I particularly want you to buy this book, but I want you to become familiar with the name of William Gillock. He's no longer with us. He died in 1992 or 1993, thereabouts, but wrote the most charming music for students. Really, really beautiful stuff, and I think he's very underrated. I think we all need to celebrate him more. So that'll be something to look out for. I'll play you one of his pieces from this book. You'll see how absolutely adorable it is. I always perk up when I hear the name William Gillock because I know it's going to be something absolutely gorgeous. Again, this is a nice little book for elementary level, but a name to watch out for if you come across or if you're looking for something a little bit different, you could just put his name into Amazon and see what comes up. Just look for him on YouTube and see what pieces come up that you like. I'll show you one now that I'm particularly fond of. And the last book I want to show you today is a collection of really well-known pieces, mostly from movies actually, 1 or 2 standalone, but a lot of them are from various movies. So for example, we've got Comptine de Notre Été, which comes from Amélie, theme from Cinema Paradiso. I don't know if you remember that movie, absolutely gorgeous. We have the Glasgow Love theme, I think I'll play you that one in a moment, from Love Actually. But it's also got things like Ballad pour Adeline, River Flows in You, all of these pieces that you hear people playing. So if you're out and about and hear somebody playing something on a piano somewhere, the likelihood is they're playing a piece that is not necessarily from this book, but is included in this book. So if you want to work on some really popular pieces, you're bound to find something in this one that you'll enjoy. This is at about from intermediate, so mid-intermediate to late intermediate. So a little bit more of a challenge, but really lovely pieces all the same. there you have it. Those are the books that I most often dip into with students. They never let me down. I always find something that the student enjoys and is happy to learn. And they're all useful from an educational point of view as well. You're going to learn a lot from each of those pieces that you learn. They are very carefully graded in most cases. So let me know what you think. I'd love to know what your favourite books are. Pop them in the comments below. There's a link to each of those books in the description here if you want to find out more about them. And I'll put links for Amazon US and for Europe as well. So that's it for me for today. I'll talk to you again soon. And in the meantime, happy practicing.